let's preview round 4 of the 2025 NRL season. So the Bunnies-Panthers opens the weekend's play on Thursday. The Panthers are going to be without Nathan Cleary following that grade 1 concussion early on against the Storm. It's going to be interesting to see who Ivan Cleary selects to play at 7. Is it going to be Schneider or is it going to be Cohen Tuolangi as the halves combination? Is Schneider going to get a call up? So that's going to be interesting to see how that impacts the Panthers, considering they're 1 and 2 to start the season, so not the perfect start of the season. They have shown some vulnerabilities, and defensively they've not been at the races because the points per game average. I mean, they've conceded a lot of points so far in the first 3 rounds, well above their recent averages for points against. The Bunnies coming off the back of another their first loss of the season against the Sharks. That was also a reality check. They were easily outclassed by the Sharks. So this is going to be quite an interesting matchup. The Panthers not at full strength. The Bunnies also not at full strength. But the Bunnies have the better record, 2-1. Panthers 1-2. It's, as I say, going to be a really interesting matchup, and we'll see if the loss of Cleary is going to be majorly disruptive for the Panthers. They weren't at their best against the Storm. They did trouble the Storm at times, but they have lost a lot of players over the years. The system continues to plug those gaps, but are we starting to see the Panthers look more human? The Bunnies under Wayne Bennett, they've had a solid start to the season, not outstanding. They haven't really kicked in. I think they're still a team in transition and rebuilding. This will be a good test for both sides to see where both sides are at after the first month of the season. Then we go to the Roosters Titans on the Friday, the first game on the Friday. This is going to be a very interesting matchup as well because the Roosters have had a really all over the place start to the season. Heavy loss in round 1, surprise win in round 2, disappointing meek loss in round 3. The Titans have only played 2 games. They had a really good win against the Knights. Obviously were poor in round 1 in their first game in round 2 because they had the bye in round 1. I think the Titans, if they play to their best and back their attack, because their attack is lethal, and both games they've scored over 20 points. The Roosters defensively look vulnerable, and they're just not looking like the Roosters of old. There are some vulnerabilities here. I'm seeing a lot of the 2016 Roosters where this could be a season of rebuild for them. But we'll see what happens. I mean, we're only a month into the season, but they've already had that really disappointing loss in round 1. So the Roosters look very, very vulnerable. The Titans look exciting, and this is the second full season of Des Hasler. Campbell and Brimson in the halves looks like a really fun attacking combination. I think where they could be weak in that regard is sometimes in game management and selection of kick or pass, and potentially defensively, because they're both fullbacks, yes. But we'll see how they do long term as a halves combination. Obviously, with Kieran Foran out long term with injury, that's going to be really interesting to see if they can stamp their authority early on. It is a new combination, and that could be an area the Roosters target. But the Roosters, they just don't look at the races. They're looking vulnerable defensively, and there's been a lot of errors so far in the 3 games that the Roosters have played. So if the Roosters are to win this game, they're going to need to have a high completion rate and keep the mistakes to a minimum. The Titans, if their attack is allowed time and space, and Campbell and Brimson are allowed time and space to choose their kicks, when to run, when to pass, this could be a high-scoring game because the Roosters defensively do look vulnerable. The Dolphins Broncos, this is starting to get the must-win for the Dolphins. They're 0-3 to start the season. The Broncos, brilliant round 1, disappointing round 2, and a scrappy win in round 3. We need to find a bit of consistency from the Broncos. They have the talent, but there have been a lot of mistakes in their game the last couple of games. The Dolphins imploded in the second half against the Tigers. They completely imploded. They were in a very strong position at half-time, and then they fell apart. So it's going to be interesting. I think the pressure's on the Dolphins to get a result here. This is getting to must-win territory for them. They haven't won yet. They are at home against the Broncos. It's going to be a tasty encounter. And this could also be a test of the Broncos as well, because they're coming up against a very desperate team at this point, and they just weren't at the races against Canberra. and they were a bit lacklustre against the Cowboys, another team that is in must-win territory. So this is going to be a fun matchup, another All Queensland derby. It's a local one as well. The Dolphins do need to step up their game. They have been poor, so there is pressure on them. Can they win under pressure? Because if they go 0-4, that could be their season as a write-off, because they're going to give up too much ground to the teams in front of them. And we were expecting more from the Dolphins this season. The Broncos are favourites going into this, but the Broncos do need to tidy up their play. Too many mistakes in their game so far this season. The Dragons Storm. The Storm are favourites going into this. The Dragons 0-2 to start the season. They're coming off the bye. Maybe the bye helps them a little bit. Shane Flanagan's been critical of some of his players with various things. They do need a response. They've been in games, they've been leading games, they've been in strong positions, and then their game management has let them down. So this is going to be really key. The Storm are trying to go 4-game, start the season unbeaten. They've obviously had a bye. So both sides have already had their byes. So 0-2 for the Dragons, 2-0 for the Storm. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this matches up. Could this be a potential upset? Potentially. Shane Flanagan has pulled off upsets against Craig Bellamy's teams before, but I think the Storm will have too much for the Dragons. The Dragons have been disappointing to start the season. And again, much was expected. There were those who were saying the Dragons could get the wooden spoon, but there were others saying actually they showed really good signs last year. They just weren't consistent enough. But so far to start the season, their game management has let them down, and it's an interesting one. But the Storm are heavy favourites for this, and the Storm do look light years ahead of everyone else in regards to fitness, and they were tested against the Panthers. But I think the Storm will have too much. The Cowboys Raiders. The Cowboys are winless, 0-3 to start the season. The Raiders are 2-1, but that was a disappointing Raiders performance against the Sea Eagles. Joey Tarpany does come back into the side. However, again, the Cowboys, much like the Dragons and Dolphins, this is started to become must-win territory for them. They have been poor to start the season. They did play better against the Broncos over the weekend, but they had a lot of the ball, and they just couldn't do enough with it when they had the opportunities in that first half against the Broncos when they were on top, and they just, the better side won out in the end. So the Cowboys, should I say, they need to figure out their attack, because their attack is just not functioning right now, and defensively they have had some real frailties on the edges. They have been blown open defensively. The Raiders, there's going to have to be a response from Ricky Stewart's men. They were very disappointing against the Sea Eagles, but they couldn't get any ball in the first half, but then discipline let them down as well. I mean, if the Raiders can find that form from round 1 and round 2, it could be a long day for the Cowboys. I have some concerns about the Cowboys. They're trending in the wrong direction, and Todd Payton, another coach, under pressure because he's been there for a while now, and more was expected of the Cowboys. I'm deeply disappointed with how the Cowboys have started the first month of the season. We'll see how that pans out. There's going to be a response from the Raiders. The Raiders, however, are a young team, so there could be a lot of mistakes in there, and the Cowboys have to take advantage of those young players making mistakes. The Sea Eagles proved that earlier today. The Sharks Bulldogs is going to be a fun matchup. Bulldogs 3-0 to start the season. Sharks 2-1 to start the season. Both these sides made finals last year. The Sharks put in a good win against the Bunnies. Really tested the Panthers in round 1 as well. The Bulldogs, they weren't at their best against the Eels. They were missing Kickow and Burton, so that's going to be interesting to see if Burton and Kickow are fit enough to start. In saying that, it's going to be a really intriguing matchup. They've both got very mobile packs and very, very quick outside backs. So this could be a very even contest. We could actually have a golden point here. The Bulldogs, the first time they've won 3 in a row since 2012 to start a season. The Sharks are wanting to take that next step to go from nearly men to actual contenders. This is a good litmus test for both sides because they're flying high right now. Both sides have had a good start to the season, and the Bulldogs won ugly against the Eels. That was a potential banana skin. They overcame that. Could have played better, but that's a sign of a good side when you can play badly, not play well, and come away with a win. So this is a really, really good litmus test to see where both sides are actually at. This one could go the whole way, golden point and all. And I reckon this one could be the closest game of the weekend. The Sea Eagles Eels. Yeah, the Sea Eagles, their attack is lethal. The Eels are all over the place. They played better against the Bulldogs, but in reality, they're still some way off. They're winless to start the season, and again, must win is starting to become um, a worrying trend here. This could be a must win game for the Eels. They've got to win somewhere, otherwise, they could become, again, tailed off. They're the worst team so far, in my opinion, to start the season. I think the other teams that are also winless have played better. So the Eels have got to find something from somewhere, whether they change the lineup, change the outside backs a bit, look at their halves combination. There has been a lot of distraction surrounding Dylan Brown since he signed, the build up to that contract signing for next year. Like, you can't blame the Eels' bad performances on Mitch Moses being out the side. There's more to it than this. Are they responding to Jason Ryles? They're defensively, they don't look great. In attack, they don't look particularly great. They've had flashes against the Bulldogs, but the Bulldogs were undermanned and not playing at their best. The Sea Eagles, look what they did to the Raiders in a blitz, in a 15-minute blitz. They won the game. The Sea Eagles can score points and score points rapidly, and the way they controlled the possession. I mean, admittedly against the Warriors, they played well in patches against the Warriors, so it shows how good the Warriors were in that game. I fear for the Eels this coming weekend. I really do. This is becoming must-win, but at the same time, the Sea Eagles could potentially put a cricket score on them before half-time. If the Sea Eagles are allowed to dictate the possession, the territory, the Eels could be in for a very, very long day. And the Sea Eagles at home at Brookvale their record speaks for itself. Whether Tom Trbojevic is fit or not will be another thing. Their win record without him isn't great, but they won without him against the Raiders quite comfortably. And then the final game of the weekend is the West Tigers versus the Warriors. Both teams have exactly the same record. Both teams lost on opening round. Both teams are now 2 in a row. Both teams have played some exciting stuff. The Tigers really are building some momentum. I think the Luai-Galvin combination is starting to work, and they are a much better side with that full off season with Benji Marshall. The signings have worked well. The atmosphere and the belief amongst the group is there. It's still a very young and experienced group with a couple of veterans, but the belief is there now. The confidence is there now. They are going to chance their arm. They are at home. The Warriors, they need to be able to perform away from home. And that has been a concern with the Warriors, is their away form in recent years. Brilliant at home, although last year wasn't great at home. They still had a better record at home than on the road. It's going to be interesting to see how the Warriors perform away from Auckland, away from Mount Smart. But both sides have had solid starts to the season. The Warriors have responded to that opening round loss. The Tigers have responded really well to their opening round loss. They've had 2 really dominant wins, which will again give them confidence. But I think this is going to be a tougher test for the Tigers. The Warriors, I think, have on paper the better lineup in total, with the right blend of experience and youth. Metcalf and Harris Tavita are starting to build that combination now in the halves. Luai and Galvin, they've had less time together than Harris Tavita and Metcalf, for example, in squads. So it's going to be interesting, but both sides are building in the right direction. This might also go to Golden Point, but the Tigers at home have responded. The Warriors away is a bit of a concern. If the Warriors can start picking up their away form, which has been an Achilles heel for them for some time, then they could be in for a good season. But both clubs are trending in the right direction. They both have really decent starts to the season, and I'm really looking forward to these lineups going head to head. I think the Warriors do have that advantage in the forward pack. I think the Tigers just are a young, exuberant, youthful, positive team right now. And Benji Marshall, I think the team are playing in his mould as a player a little bit off the cuff, a little bit unstructured at times. They're willing to chance their arm, so we shall see. So that looks like a fun match-up to end next weekend's action. The Newcastle Knights have the bye, coming off that defeat to the Titans, where they were disappointing, so that's a full week for them to work on things. And of course the Knights and the Eels, with the Dylan Brown situation in that contract, it's starting to overshadow things. Maybe the Knights were a bit distracted by that as well, with all the reporting on that. But they didn't play well. They've got the week off. So it's a very interesting weekend of action coming up. Place your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you reckon the scores are going to be? Because I do think some of these games could be quite close. There are some desperate teams out there that are still winless to start the season. Will there still be winless teams come the end of round 4, like the Eels, Cowboys, Dragons and Dolphins? One of them has to win eventually. But it's already... The ladder's already looking kind of interesting. There's some surprises in there. I mean, the Bulldogs being unbeaten 3 in a row. No one expected that at the start of the season. There were some saying they would fall back. They've actually started the season really well. The Sea Eagles can win without Tom Trbojevic, so they can win without Turbo, and they proved that really well against the Raiders. The Raiders have had a better than advertised start to the season. Disappointing loss, but you're going to get them with a young team. The Panthers looking vulnerable. The Storm, while they've won their opening 2 games, I think there's some vulnerabilities there. I don't think they're as invincible as people think they are. But that's just my opinion. But for me, for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very, very soon.